Today we're going to be talking about the post-production side of our micro-budget film, Fragile Fish, which can, of course, be seen at fragilefish.com. I'm sure you're sick of hearing that.
We'll throw it on the video, too, so you guys can just click.
So, you want to walk them through kind of what we're going to be discussing, the different aspects of post-production, maybe a brief overview of what post-production is?
Absolutely. So, essentially, post-production is after production and pre-production. No, so essentially after we did production and we shot the whole thing, then we have to essentially import the files into computers, and that is where we would begin at post-production. So first and foremost, you're essentially just going to edit it together, just uncolored, the sound not attached or anything like that. You're just editing the video to essentially match the script and tell the story that you're wanting to tell. And then secondly, essentially we're going to talk about coloring the movie. So essentially color grading it, color correcting it, using a couple different plugins and whatnot. We'll go in depth. And then after that, essentially sound editing. So making sure that we have all of the correct, like, recorded audio with the boom mic attached to the correct video clips. So you're not hearing the camera audio, but you're actually hearing the audio that was recorded with the boom mic. And then after that, we would do... So after sound editing would be what? What are we looking at? I mean, I guess that's final. That's it, really. We're just kind of going through a final walkthrough of the video, make sure everything looks good and sounds good. And then with that audio, then the last layer is essentially adding like Foley and the actual like sound effects. Like if a cup is set down or a cup is moved, or we get up and a sound is made. And obviously we didn't just have like a perfect recording of the sound moving, so we would record a chair moving and add it in post-production. So those are kind of the steps. Taylor, let's just get into it. Let's talk about just editing the files together. So
we used we kind of oscillate back and forth between trains of thought in terms of what we wanted to use to edit the movie. I was really familiar with Final Cut Pro just from I used to work for a technology company, and we used Final Cut. So I was pretty familiar with that program, but there were some people that were saying Premiere would be better. But since I was going to be doing some of the heavy lifting along with Brad and Mark for the first part, and then Tanner for the second part, we decided to go ahead and use Final Cut to do all the editing. A lot of people were saying that the magic timeline, which basically is a snapping feature, it tries to kind of predict what you're trying to do, and that bugs the hell out of a lot of people. But we knew kind of how to maneuver around that, and it actually ended up being to our advantage that we used Final Cut because it was so easy to use. Tanner wasn't really familiar a lot with the editing process. I'd done not a ton of editing, but I was very familiar with the program.
I was completely green, for sure.
Yeah, and Brad was pretty familiar with it, and then Mark, I think...
He was probably the most familiar with it, right? He had taken classes and stuff like that.
Brad?
Both of them, Brad and Mark, I should say.
I don't know if Mark took classes on Final Cut. I think he took classes on...
I see what you're saying, on different kind of stuff. Makes sense.
Premiere or After Effects.
Okay.
But yeah, we used Final Cut for the majority of it, and what we did was we kind of went scene by scene and sorted the clips first. We basically, and that was my job, and it was incredibly tedious, but basically taking a look at all the shots that we have and lining them up into takes.
Labeling is a big part of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we would kind of break it down by scene, by take, and then by length to see what the longest take was, because logically, you'd think that if the take ran long, it was going well, right? So we had a sorting process that probably took about a week for me to do it. And
was that basically all you at that point?
Brad helped a little bit. Mark was in there a little bit as well, but a lot of it was me with headphones on.
Sure.
But definitely, sometimes I needed a second ear, or whenever they were there, I definitely lean on them. But
right.
A lot of the sorting process was me.
Okay.
Which sucks, but it's better, if you try to hand it off to somebody, it just gets kind of gets kind of messed up. You know, like you're
Right.
like, where did this person leave off? What is their
there's like a
naming
disconnect for sure.
naming convention, et cetera, et cetera. And at this point, Tanner was in Texas when I was doing all the naming and sorting, so he didn't really have a big say in that because obviously we're not going to send all the files just to send them right back.
Right.
But after that, we basically mapped out exactly how we wanted the movie to look in terms of shots. And we kind of set it up by different takes, imported everything into Final Cut. And then we had two computers running. So Brad was using one computer. I think he was on, I mean, it doesn't matter, but 15-inch MacBook Pro.
And then you're doing a 27-inch iMac, right?
Yeah, I was on the iMac for the majority of the time, but we kind of swapped back off. But we would basically just work on scenes. You know, he would work on one scene, and then we kind of put them together and see how it looked. And the master file stayed on the iMac.
One thing I was going to say is I probably came back like after we shot the movie. Then it was probably 10 days that I was in Texas, and then I flew back. And then with the editing process, like the first week was just kind of labeling and getting things together. But essentially, you keep editing and changing the video like every single day, right? Like it's changing pretty drastically every day by flip-flopping certain cuts and takes and stuff like that. So a lot of it is like consistently changing, right?
Yeah, I mean the product is, but like your vision obviously stays the same.
Right. And that was neat about the actual editing process was that's kind of second to the actual writing of the screenplay in telling the story. Because like you have a bunch of video, but you're actually going to finalize that story by like a huge part of it is how you're portraying that story with the editing. Because we could have told a completely different story.
And there were some things that we didn't get. We kind of had to edit around.
Right.
We wanted to get
true.
a more clear shot of Vic dying, and we didn't, so we kind of had to edit around that.
Right.
And we kind of rewrote one of the scenes because we didn't... we just shot it a little bit differently, I guess, than we had envisioned. What Mark was really good at was continuity. Like if someone would turn, he would like try to have us edit, or he would do it himself. Turn so that the next shot would be like
edit
him,
on the action,
him
edit
finishing.
on the movement.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which is really cool. And Brad was really good about the stuff that I would just get super frustrated about, which is like frame by frame stuff. Like if we had to do like with the turning, Mark was good at the idea and execution, and then
Right.
Brad was like fine-tuning it even more, like going frame by frame to make sure that it looked as good as possible.
It was cool because like he would kind of just jump in, like when one of us was essentially trying to edit like over and over again, like one specific scene, but we're not getting it exactly. Like he was good at being meticulous about how that certain sequence was edited, like where, like you said, where Mark was kind of saying, "Oh yeah, this will need to work this way," because you can see like his movement here or something, and then Brad would kind of jump in and just kind of literally go like frame by frame, like with certain key shortcuts, and then just like nail it in one go, and be like, "Yeah, that's how it works."
Yeah, he was really good at that. So that whole editing process,
Yeah, how long did that take?
I think 2 weeks. I think we worked on it for a solid 2 weeks.
It's crazy.
And we were kind of all going, substituting in. I think that, I mean, I don't want to break it down by percentages of who edited, but it was just a big collaboration, really.
For sure.
So after we got it done and edited, Tanner and I actually moved to Texas, pretty much in the middle of the project. I got a new job out here, and timing wise, we kind of had to leave, and we're like, okay, well, the movie's edited, so I guess this is a good kind of stopping point. Sam, the guy who did sound design for it, was. We thought at that point we had the picture was locked. You know, we thought we had the final edit done, so he was going to start on sound, and I think we changed a couple things. So by the time he got the first cut of sound done for the first scene,
It was a different edit.
it was a different edit. Yeah.
Right.
So that was kind of a green moment for us where we're just like, shit, you know, I don't know what the communication was, but it was probably just because we We moved and continued to make tweaks and edits, which I don't even remember doing that, but it was definitely a different cut when we got it sent back. Yeah, which isn't anybody's fault. It was just a lapse in communication.
Right. I think that was a learning moment for sure. Kind of as we go, we're just gonna share some challenges and stuff that we learned from. This would be one for sure. Just having clear communication, especially if we're doing something like moving, because in big pictures like Hollywood ones, there's still oftentimes there's like the team working on post-production is probably like in a different city or state completely than the team that shot it. You know what I mean? So it stays consistent from tiny pictures to big ones. But that'd be something to learn from, essentially, was just having clear communication from the top down. For sure.
I think we did a good job for the majority of it. There was just some lapses in communication that cost us some time.
Yeah.
The most time-consuming piece was color.
Oh my gosh.
We wanted it to look a certain way. We probably put bids out. How many different? I mean, you guys only saw a fraction of them, and I showed you guys maybe 10 or 15. I probably saw 50 different people try to color it. We'd give them one 30-second snippet, and they'd be like, let me show you what I can do. And everyone was going for a different look. We couldn't. No one understood what we were trying to explain, and in my head, I was just like, I know exactly how we want it to look.
Well, a big thing was that, like, consistent with everyone that sent their trials back to us, was basically the heavy teal and orange look, and with like washed out skin. It was like everybody, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had those same components.
And we wanted it to look more cold and dark and very contrasted.
Right, but still have warmth to the skin and everything.
Yeah. So it was a very particular look that we were going for. A lot of the professionals use DaVinci Resolve to get the full.
That shit's expensive, isn't it?
The program, no. The actual hardware is incredibly expensive.
Right?
It's like a whole setup. It's like 30. I think it's 30,000.
Oh,
so obviously we didn't do that since our budget. Since our budget was
2,000.
Yeah, $2,500. But we actually put bids out for people to do the color because that was something that I had never done. I had never dabbled in color correction or color grading.
I don't think any of us on the whole crew had ever done color grading at that point, right? Well, I guess probably one of our camera operators, but that's basically it. Noah had done color before.
Yeah, and he was supposed to do it, and then he went on a missions trip, or he went on some type of trip where he wasn't able to help us out on the color. But we ended up using Film Convert Pro. It was a plugin for Final Cut that worked pretty well. If you're interested in doing some, I would say it's pretty minor color correction and color grading. There's some stuff built into Final Cut that you can use, but it's not very robust. If you're trying to go for a certain look, and really change the color differences between shadows, midtones, and highlights, it's a good program to use.
It works well for people that don't know anything about it too, because
you can it's kind of like Lightroom. You know, the difference between Photoshop and Lightroom is kind of the difference between DaVinci Resolve and
Film
Convert, yeah.
Right.
Because you can just mess around with the little color wheels and say, hey, this looks pretty cool.
Just kind of like trial and error over and over again.
Yeah. But that's what we use for color grading. And from what I understand, obviously, like I said before this, I had no experience in color correction or color grading, and I just looked up kind of the difference again. But color correction, to me, at least what I did first with all the clips, was I made sure that the lighting was good, the contrast was similar, kind of just making sure the lighting and the contrast was right. And then the color grade is
the general tone of the shots, right, was consistent.
Not tone, just exposure, contrast, that kind of stuff. And then once I did that with all the shots and kind of made them look similar with the built-in tools in Final Cut, then at that point I went through with Film Convert each shot, and each scene had a look, because the whole movie doesn't have to look exactly the same. It has to have a similar vibe, right? But each scene definitely has to look the same. You know, like it's a shot of me, and then it goes back to a shot of me, and then a shot of you.
Like it'd have to stay consistent.
Yeah, there has to be some consistency
For sure.
So that was very difficult. I think I don't know how much time I spent, between 200 and 300 hours. It was just, I just remember staying up.
I had a go at it and spent tons of hours on it, and it just wasn't clicking.
It looked pretty bad. I mean, at first when I did it, it didn't look very good either. It just takes a lot of time, and by no means was it the best color job ever, but I think everyone was pretty happy.
Good. I think it looks good. It is absolutely the least fun part of the process.
Yeah, I mean,
none.
you have to be very passionate about it, and I was definitely only doing it because I had to.
Necessity.
Yeah. But yeah, color grading basically is the part of the process where you, that's more the artistic process. That's where you can make the skin look a certain way. That's where you can make the blue look a certain hue, saturated color, desaturated color. You know, I know in the death scene, we really saturated the red to make it pop a little bit, the blood.
Everything comes back to telling the story, basically.
Yeah, all the colors.
Awesome.
I mean, it was a very dark story, so we definitely had a lot of cold tones in there.
Yep.
We had a lot of blues. It
was
one
just,
important aspect too. I want to give a huge shout out to two of our friends, Ryan Bell and J-Mo's. The soundtrack, after everybody edited the movie, they didn't hear it with the soundtrack until months later. And when we sent it, everyone was like, "Holy shit, this seems a lot darker than when we first edited it."
Yeah, it was funny because obviously us two were from start to finish working with the whole movie in post-production, but most of the other crew only saw pieces of it, and then we had seen basically the final cut at least 2 months before everyone else had even seen like something close to it. So like he was saying with the music, when we shot it, I think a lot of the camera operators just were like, "Oh, this is just a fun thing we're doing with our friends." But then once we had them watch it again, it was definitely a much darker movie than I think they thought, right? That was our vision going into it, was making a really intense, like kind of dark film that had a ton of like...
well, it just goes to show how important music is.
Right.
I mean...
gigantically important, and these guys killed it.
Yeah. I mean, J-Mo's and Ryan didn't even... I mean, they knew about each other, but it wasn't like they were collaborating.
Right.
And the music doesn't sound like it's by two different people. I mean, it's just... It's really awesome.
Yeah. And to get specific, J-Mo's essentially did like the score part of it in a lot of ways. Everything essentially up to the fight sequence, or I guess he did it through the fight sequence, and then the last like kind of music-y type song to end the film was by Ryan Bell, and he knocked that out. How fast, honestly, do you think he did that?
Gosh, I mean, a day or two.
Yeah, like these guys are crazy. They're really good, though.
Incredibly talented.
Yep.
Yeah. But after that, we went back, and Tanner, because of all the issues, we had an issue with matching up the audio. There was an issue with the cuts, and then there was an issue sending it through Dropbox or Google Drive or anything like that. So Tanner and I actually took it upon ourselves to match up, I'd say 90% of the audio. And that was...
I mean, some had been previously matched up, but we did the full 100% again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Start to finish, we matched up all the audio.
Yeah, we just changed some takes once we got back to California in April.
Right.
But what we did was we basically sat on the couch and listened to each of the takes, and then listened to the video and the camera audio, and matched it up as best as possible. And if there wasn't something, we went back through and did ADR. That was a huge thing for us. Again, like we said in the production part of it, we wish we had used lavs.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically wireless mics that just clip on somewhere where you can hide, and then the actor can get a really good take, and it'll be rolling basically the whole time.
A lot of that process of matching up audio was kind of similar to editing the original footage. Like, it's pretty much going through labeling, finding out which are the good takes, and then kind of putting them in little scenes and takes so that we know where to put them into the video file, basically.
Another mistake we made was doing ADR at different times in different rooms.
Yep.
So then editing, the echo or trying to make it sound exactly the same, EQing it so it sounds like it's in the same room. Incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Sam did a good job of doing the best work possible, but I mean, that was kind of a rookie mistake on our part, is using, I think we used the same microphone, but it was different rooms.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
A lot of it just has to do with like where the character is at in space, basically, and trying to match what the actual sound would sound like when recording it. So, for example, like when the initial car scene, the audio sounds a little bit echoey when really there wouldn't be an echo like inside a vehicle. Whereas, like you said, Sam was able to kind of mix it where it's not really that noticeable, but that is something that, of course, we notice when watching it. So that'd be something to learn from as well. So after we did the sound stuff, do you want to talk just about, because obviously this was before mixing and mastering, but just kind of throwing in sound effects and like Foley and stuff and how that process worked?
Yeah, we did some very brief Foley. I think we did it for 2 nights. Basically, if the boom didn't capture footsteps, we did our best to look for some royalty-free stuff online, and it just isn't exactly what's in the movie.
Right.
It's never going to be right. So we would watch the scene, and then we'd try to replay it with a microphone and kind of follow the footsteps. Clinking glasses we actually did on this table here with an Audio-Technica microphone. Basically,
we recorded footsteps. Like, I guess you just said that, but yeah, we recorded the footsteps to match the footsteps in the movie. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I just said.
That's what you just said, huh? Okay. I thought when you said the royalty-free thing, I was thinking, wait. No, we did the footsteps, but no, then you said it right after. Yeah. So my mistake.
So we did as much as possible that we could. Everything basically on screen you have to hear a sound for, and basically it has to be incredibly exaggerated. Like a clinking glass isn't going to be like cling cling cling,
right?
You know, but you have to see what you hear and hear what you see in the movie.
It was interesting too, right? Because when we would watch him moving around the glass and we don't hear anything, it feels so weird because you're like, there should be something there. And then we went, like you said, over-exaggerated, clinging these glasses together.
And then it sounds right.
Threw it in, and then it's like perfect. Like your brain just assumes that, oh yeah, that's the actual audio that was created during filming, which is so interesting because like obviously that's something that I...
Moving bottles and clinking glasses and putting a ring down and...
right.
There was a bunch of stuff that we did.
It's true.
I think that's an important aspect too for micro-budget filming. Take the extra day, even if it's in post-production, to do a little Foley. And people kind of laughed at us when we said, oh, we want to do Foley. They're like, dude, it's a $2,500 movie that you're not going to premiere at any festivals. Why would you do that?
Yep.
And I'm thinking like,
but if
because we want to.
Yeah. If a chair moves, make a chair sound. Like that was basically free, right? Because we had a mic that we had from years ago when playing music, and we used that and just literally...
I think we used to use that as your overhead drum mic.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And then just had a chair move, recorded it, threw it in the thing, and it sounds good. So that's something definitely just in the details. I think if you're making something like this, like a project like this, even for school, those are little things like audio. If you see something and you don't hear it, it's going to stick out to the audience. Or on the flip side, if they see it and they hear it, they just automatically pass by it. But it's kind of like a built-in understanding that it's there, but that just adds something to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and another thing that we mixed all this sound in Logic. I was familiar with Logic for guitar and scratch tracks and click tracks and that type of thing, but I never had really mixed any audio or vocals.
Right.
So that was interesting for us to go and match up all the audio in Logic because we could just import the movie right into it.
Right.
Brad was really good at it. Sam has a certificate for Pro Tools, so there was a lot of overlap there. One thing, I'm just looking at our notes here. We used Logic for matching audio mixing, and we actually used it for mastering. We might have used one plugin on Pro Tools.
I think it was for the gunshots, right? Like you used a certain feature to...
Slow-mo.
Yeah.
The slow-mo for the gunshots is what we did in Pro Tools.
Right. We did end up mastering in Logic.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you're right.
One thing that we kind of want to warn people about is using different cameras taking a step back here, for color grading and color correction, the color gamut difference, or like the color depth, like how rich the colors are, was a lot different between using a DSLR and using like an actual video camera, like the Blackmagic Cinema that we used.
Where the Blackmagic basically like almost shoots in RAW, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when,
So
when you
the
shoot
so the
it, there's
file
almost
types
no
are
color.
the file types are different, and the color gamut and the color depth was a lot. It was just very difficult to match up.
For sure.
The contrast was a lot different. Coloring was a bitch.
We were fortunate that there was like a light peering directly over Ezra's. I think like it would have been left shoulder, which I think kind of made it work because it was a little bit. It was a little bit brighter and less blue than Ira's shots, but I think it worked because of that kind of visually. The light like enabled that to work basically. Don't you think?
Yeah.
For sure. I think the contrast actually worked because you were on a different side of the room, which I think was interesting.
So from a post-production standpoint, we kind of walked you through everything. I think that's really it.
Basically,
we uploaded it to YouTube, got a couple thousand views, made a website for it, IMDb. That was quite a little process.
Mm-hmm.
Did small things that really just made it seem a little bit more legit. Like we had one of our friends, Noah, he made a poster for it. We printed out posters for everyone in the cast. Just because for low budget stuff, I mean, that's how you kind of thank people.
Right.
You don't give them a bonus or anything.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that too. Is when you're doing small or like independent films, you don't often have the budget to pay your actors and your crew, so you do it essentially off of meal copy credit. It's just kind of like currency in the acting world.
For up-and-coming actors, obviously.
Right. So if like you're not really a name yet, you're trying to build your resume, you'd get like a meal catering on set, which we provided, and then you get a copy of the final film, which we obviously posted on YouTube, and then we sent out the actual files to the actors and the crew, and then you get credit, which is essentially nowadays your IMDb credit, which is virtually priceless in a lot of ways. And so creating that IMDb was not really for ourselves, but essentially to, like he said, thank and make it official that everyone was in the project, and they contributed to it basically, and their name is attached.
Yeah. Yeah, overall it was a great process. It
For
took
sure.
about 9 months for us to finish 12 minutes of footage, really.
Yeah.
So
Post-production is definitely the most tedious and the most challenging, I think, in a lot of ways, because I guess it would range from where your passion lies. Because I know for us, coming up with the story, being passionate about telling these characters' stories, basically, was fairly easy, right? Like it was obviously not just a piece of cake, but because we were excited about telling the story, and that was something that we were really intent on. It kind of flowed from our fingers to the keyboard. Much in the way that shooting, because we had the script already, shooting that script, making it come to life, was just kind of built in, and Taylor and members of our crew already had lots of experience shooting photos and videos, and so that was just kind of built in, whereas this post-production was definitely something that we probably learned the most from, right?
yeah.
Like I know it was foreign to me to be able to jump on a computer and edit video, and then it ended up where we were both like finding files, editing files, coloring, doing sound, all of it on this little tiny micro budget film, but we just learned lots from it. And then to conclude, since this will be kind of our last podcast talking about Fragile Fish, again, fragilefish.com if you want to watch it. It took us about 9 months from start to finish, and it was just kind of a love project for us, I guess, something that kind of got us into making film and TV, basically. So
Yeah.
What were your biggest, to conclude, what were your biggest takeaways, like personally, as far as you making this thing, basically? I know it's a very, very vague question, but just some things that stuck out to you.
It's a lot of fun, and you should do it with people you enjoy being around, because you're going to do it together for a long time, even on a short project. The other thing is, for me, I'm passionate about acting and directing, but I think I would want to do those things autonomously. I wouldn't want to do them again on the same project unless it was a little bit higher budget and a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. I think to piggyback off of that too, I think it'd be fun.
I fucking hate that term.
I don't even know where would it even come from, but I think something like Guy Ritchie type style where he does like all the direction, but like he always cameos in his movies. Like I think we'd like to do that kind of thing. I think that would be really fun, and maybe even one more than a cameo, like have like little scenes or whatever.
Quentin Tarantino style.
Yeah, I agree. But anyways, continue.
That was really it. I mean, just that I do have a passion for both. You know, we went and acted in one of our friend PJ Jenkins, his pilot.
Okay. Yeah.
His pilot. PJ's a great guy, great writing, and he's getting a lot of work now. If you ever need a badass looking dude, he's the guy. Works out of LA and New Jersey. What were your takeaways, man? What did you learn? What was the biggest thing? Self-discovery, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, because I was completely greened out the whole thing entirely, I think my favorite takeaways or the things that I took away from it were just similar to yours in a sense. It was really fun. I love doing it. I discovered a passion for sure. Really, I love the creative endeavor of just saying, hey, this is something in my brain. I want to put it on paper, share it with people, and create something for tons of people to watch, you know? Yep. Like, I love that that's that ability, or that exists to create something like that. I've come to know I love story, and I love character development, and just being able to watch something that somebody else created out of their brain and buy into it, like, emotionally and mentally, you know? Where if sad things hit you, you feel sad for the character and you can show empathy to a fictional character on screen. Like, I think all of that's so powerful, and you can really do some neat things with it. I think those are my biggest takeaways, you know?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you to everybody that was in the crew and the cast. You know, PJ and Ricardo had a huge impact, and I think that this podcast is kind of not the end of something, but it was kind of cool to kind of relive it for a second.
Right.
So just thanks everyone that was a part of it. You know, you guys had a huge impact on our lives for the last year. Just watching all the scenes and hearing everybody's passion and kind of going back and forth with everybody and everyone just doing it as a passion project.
Yep.
Couldn't have asked for a better crew. You know, everyone performed very well. And thank you guys for listening. Whoever's out there listening, thanks so much for listening.
And as always, you guys can find us on podcast for iTunes, Stitcher for Android. You can find us on SoundCloud directly, where we
host the podcast,
basically, and then YouTube as well. You can find us all at the Gray Area Podcast, or just the Gray Area, GREIGH, as in our last name. And hey, thanks for listening again.
Yep, hit us up on Twitter at Gray Brothers, GREIGH Brothers. We're also, like I said, the website should be up next week or maybe by the next 2 or 3 podcasts. This was episode 7, talking about the post-production aspect of our movie Fragile Fish.
Bye-bye.